can you recall any other, like, holy crap? I don't know how to explain this, but this is some seriously synchronistic moments that I'm experiencing right now.
So I have one good story for you. So hunting for me is new. Hunting a squirrel is incredibly hard. And there was a point where I just got into hunting squirrels and was getting a decent amount of success. But I felt bad, like these creatures have been filling my area with music and playfulness and companionship. And I was putting a big dent in their population. So I remember just talking to one and saying, if you find me a grouse, I will not shoot you today. And it just squeals like it got stuck with something and ran off. And within a minute, literally within a minute, a grouse appeared. And I got that grouse, and that fed me for a day or two. So it's moments like that where you do feel so connected. And I think that's the magic of being in the woods as much as possible and practicing gratitude and practicing prayer, if there's a better word for it. But to ask to outwardly and to receive and then feel what that feels like, I think it's something so magical. And it doesn't surprise me that the Hadza have that relationship. And from a different perspective, they are training their attention, because when you think about hunting, you're using all 5 of your senses all the time. And that form of meditation is, if you're constantly meditating, like, who knows what you can be picking up, what waveforms and what little nuances in nature and the world around you that you'd be picking up that someone would be oblivious to.
Speaking of like sensory perceptions, I've interviewed quite a few cognitive psychologists about sensory perceptions, since a lot of people think perception is reality. It's not true. Reality is reality. Your perception is often distorted. Because one through line that I've seen on every single season of Alone, since I love that show, including yours, is every participant talks about, this is the greatest meal I've ever had. I practice mindful eating when I do have chances on the weekends for lunch and dinner with my eyes closed, no stimulations, just myself and the meal with my eyes closed. And it's amazing. It does taste better. You eat a lot slower, you get full faster, and so on. So it also has like weight management benefits. Of course, my example pales in terms of you're in this immersive life and death situations. But can you walk me through some of your sensory changes you've noticed, but also in terms of like tying this with gratitude when you do have that meal, like the savoriness of it, and just because I'm a big foodie, just like anyone is in LA, I guess. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about like taste and just sensory improvements or enhancements.
Yeah, you might get a kick out of this. So like any first Asian on the show, I brought rice. So as one of my items, I was like, I can't be the first Asian on this show and not bring rice. Like that'd just be not right. So for my emergency ration, I had rice, salt, and sugar. And scientifically, I had it for different reasons to treat dysentery and kind of gut issues if I needed rehydration. So with that amount, I could have been out sick for 2 weeks on that and then come back to the kind of starting point at 0. But for meals, adding a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar to your meals, and then also having just a few pinches of rice to make jok, or like porridge, was something fantastic. I remember for Thanksgiving, I had grouse, I had rice porridge with a little bit of salt. I had some cranberries on that. I roasted bunch berries that made it taste like red peppers, like roasted red peppers. And all of that filled my pot, like a 2-quart pot, completely full. I couldn't finish it because of what that rice did, because it just expands. So you're having all these things, which may not be the most calories in, probably less than 500 for sure in total, but you just felt so nourished. So the psychological component of that is so amazing, because as a physician, thinking back and calculating the amount of weight I was losing was, at the beginning, about 1.5 pounds to towards the end, about 0.5 pound a day. I shouldn't have been able to do what I was doing out there with the calories I was taking. I was taking less than 200 kilocalories a day when my requirements is at least 20 times that. So you're taking a 20th of your intake and you are laughing, you're running around and you're hunting. Like, how is that even possible? When we know as like physicians or nutritionists or even people who are treating like anorexia, like that should not be a thing. Like, how are you still doing that? And it goes back to like a lot of the native tribes around the world. They are still doing that under that calorie deficits, and they are loving life to one extent or the other. And it was such a gift to experience that for myself, to challenge that assumption.
How many pounds did you end up losing by the time you left?
62.
Oh my!
I'm skinny. Like I'm fairly skinny, and I have a fast metabolism. It took me almost half a year just to gain like 35 pounds. And I was eating like 5 burgers a day, drinking oil and all that stuff, and like it took me a long time just to gain 35 pounds. And I lost, like, I would say the majority of it for the first like 30 days because like my body's not used to carrying so much weight, so it just burns it. So I was lucky enough to look at my stats at the end, and I was burning about a pound and a half a day for the first 30 days. And then it kind of tapers down. It's like, okay, this is my regular weight, so it's a little slower. And then when you become more deficit, you burn slower still.
And not to even mention, like, you fell that one time on the tree trunk. You caught yourself. I think that injury could have been a lot worse. And I think that's when you're like, all right, I don't know if maybe I'm sure you fell countless times, but I remember this
so many times.
Fall. Yeah.
like I said, I'm not a hunter. I've done like target recurve bow shooting for like 7 years, but at that point I've never hunted before. So I didn't know what was a bad shot to take. So I was taking like tree shots and getting my arrows stuck in like 30-foot trees. And it wasn't the best shot, so that means I needed all my arrows. So I was climbing up those 30-foot trees like Mulan with like a belt behind the tree and just like going up there. And I was doing it at a significant caloric deficit, and I did that 3 times. Then I made a second shelter on the beach because I thought that was a good idea. I thought it was a fun project. And like the tree stump like fell so far down the ridge that I had to like hull it up, and it was literally like almost 400 pounds. So I had to delimit and then move it up. And I've been doing all that stuff like on less than 500 kilocalories a day, and they're just laughing about it.
I have fast metabolism too. Like if I skip a gym for a week, I lose weight because I lose my water weight. I just don't have that much appetite. But that is crazy. So like, on that note, you talked about your increased ability to master your emotions and your attention. I think that's the words you chose. You represent something unique, right? Aside from being the first Asian on the show. And quick funny endnote, when me and my partner were watching you, like, oh, finally an Asian on the show. And of course he's a doctor. I mean, stereotype all the way, right?
Yeah.
But
gotta represent.
Gotta represent. But I think what really makes you unique is, as you talked about on the show, your competitive advantage, so to speak, is you understand the nuances that separates actual medical emergency versus self-perceived medical emergency, which is your edge. So dovetailing that into your increased ability to master your emotions, attention, how did that work out? Were you even more fine-tuned? And yeah, just anything in between there.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. I would say at least 50% of all alone contestants in our history of the show have pulled themselves out for what they perceive to be a medical emergency. Now, there are things that I would definitely recommend. Like if you're a 50-year-old male and you're complaining of chest pain, get out of there. Like the hospitals typically are very far away. And if you're having a heart attack, that's not worth it. Or if you're having stroke symptoms, that's not worth it. But sticking yourself with a hook or feeling like you're a bit constipated and worried about sepsis, like, or having even your knee swell up and you're thinking about that's a septic joint before you kind of do proper compression and rest and all that stuff. Like it does give you an advantage in that sense, knowing that, okay, this is not something that I would go to the emergency department for. So I could fix it myself. And a lot of the times, if I were to do a bunch of different things, like let's say if I cut open my leg, there is a certain threshold of what I would treat for myself. I have that advantage of having more medical experience than the people rescuing me. right? Like that's a fact. Like these are medics and paramedics, and they're highly trained, but I have more experience and knowledge than they do, and I could probably fix it in the field just as well as the ER doctor in a rural ER that has not a whole lot of instruments anyways. So that was definitely an advantage. Now the flip side is, what happens when you hit that red flag? What happens when you see that line and you will walk it, or you choose to walk it? Then you have to have that really deep conversation with yourself is, okay, is that worth it? $500,000 for a physician is not a whole lot of money. I don't mean to sound like a particular way, but it's not worth losing your ability to be a physician, right? So if you injure yourself and lose your hands or your ability to walk, and you hinder that ability to be a physician, not only are you canceling out your whole reason, because I think physician identity is a very strong identity. So killing that for $500,000 is not worth it when you're walking that line. And in addition to that, you're also thinking about recovery time too. So in my head, I knew my start date, no matter what happens, was January 1st. So I was thinking about, okay, what's rehab going to look like? I don't have a family doctor. I don't have like all these things set up for me. How am I supposed to move to a different country, Canada to the US, start a new job, and be okay working? You know, all these things were going through my mind as well. So that is definitely a double-edged sword, and definitely played into effect, in addition to my main reason to be out there, which was to send a message. Could I deliver that message if I was pulled out? And I don't think that the answer is yes. So those were the two big factors that ended up causing me to tap.
And I'm pretty sure your physician insurance does not cover voluntary participation in a loan, right?
Nope. I would doubt that they would say like, oh yeah, sure, here's 80% of your salary for the rest of your life.
Thank you for discovering more with us this week. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out the full-length episode at one of the windows that pops up. And as always, see you again in next week's train of Discover More. Thank you for tuning in.